Okay, hello folks. Thanks for tuning in. This week we have chapters 14, 15, and 16. And David's continuing to work on his plan, but has a run-in with an IRS agent. Hope you enjoy.
Chapter 14. David wrestled the smaller of the large rocks out of its hiding place. He started to clean the dirt away and was awestruck by the beauty of the stone. The quartz was clear in most places, and you could see through it to the gold veins inside. David took a utility lamp and put it up against the stone. The gold veins appeared to nearly jump out at you. David now knew for sure the stones would be worth much more intact. David cleaned all 3 stones, including picking all the dirt from the small cracks and polishing the large surfaces of quartz with a stone polisher. When he was done, he carefully wrapped the stones in plastic, then bubble wrap. Then built crates of wood to store and move the stones. He put some small caster wheels on the bottom of the crates to aid in moving them. David went to see his old boss at the auto parts store, and after passing him one of the gold coins, secured shipping labels and company stickers. He used them to camouflage the crates to look like auto parts. He also built smaller crates for the gold bars. The small crates held 3 bars and looked like ammo cases, and could easily be moved. Chapter 15. One of David's worst fears from the start was being able to sell the gold without the government, IRS, or anyone else for that matter finding out. On a whim, he started looking on the internet and found to his surprise there were companies in Arizona that would buy the gold, no questions asked. He also found that he could open an offshore account in the Cayman Islands over the internet. David picked one of the largest banks because it also had a branch in the Bahamas. The next day, David got an early start and drove to one of the gold buying companies. He took one of the gold bars and 2 sacks of the coins along in a briefcase. When he got there, David was surprised how many cars were in the parking lot. Once inside, it reminded David of a cross between a jewelry store and a new car dealership. There were display counters featuring gold and silver coins of all variety. There were also small cubicles that had a desk and a couple of chairs in them. Behind the desk were staff members of the store, much like the car salesman at a dealership. This put David more on the defense because he did not like car salesmen. A young woman walked up to David and greeted him. "Hello, sir. Is this your first visit to our store?" "Yes," David replied. "Will you be buying or selling, sir?" "Selling, I hope." "Over or under 10,000? 10,000 what?" David asked. "Dollars, sir." "Over," David replied cautiously, not really caring for the way this conversation was going. "This way, sir," the woman said, and motioned away from the cubicles. "What are those for?" David asked, indicating the cubicles. "Oh, those are for people who are buying." The woman led David down a hallway lined with doors and indicated one of the doorways. "If you'll step in here, sir, one of our representatives will be right with you." David stepped into the room. There was a desk with chairs in front and a sort of workbench against the back wall with equipment on it. David recognized most of the equipment. It was for weighing and testing gold. David took a seat in front of the desk and put his briefcase in his lap. A few minutes later, a man came in and introduced himself as Thomas Baker. "What can I do for you, sir?" he asked. "I was thinking of selling a little gold," David answered. "Well, let's see what you have and I will appraise it." David's briefcase was sitting in his lap with the handle facing him, so he was able to open it without Thomas seeing inside. David took out one of the coins and handed it to Thomas. Thomas took the coin, turned it over in his hand a few times, feeling the weight. Thomas then wheeled his chair over to the workbench. He first weighed the coin and then tested it for purity. When he was done, he returned to his desk and said, "Okay, this weighs 5.1 ounces and tests at 93% pure. With today's price, I will set the wholesale value at $6,000. Do you have anything else you would like me to appraise?" David reached into the briefcase and picked up the sack he had removed the coin from. He then tossed the sack onto Thomas's desk. As the sack landed, several of the gold coins spilled out onto the desk. David watched Thomas's reaction with interest. He thought he saw the man flinch, then catch himself. As Thomas reached for the coins, David could see his hands were slightly shaking. David reached into his briefcase and retrieved the second bag of coins. But this time he set them on the desk. However, he let them drop far enough to make a loud clunk sound. Thomas's eyes widened slightly, and small drops of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Were you intending to sell all of these, Mr. Randy Dodson," David replied. "And yes, if I liked your offer. It will take me a while to test all of these. Let me show you to our hospitality room, Mr. Dodson." "One last thing," David said, as he again reached into his briefcase. "You might as well appraise this while you're at it." David laid the gold bar on Thomas's desk. This time Thomas could not control his reaction. He gulped, and then his mouth opened, but nothing came out. Finally, Thomas composed himself and said, "I will get right on it, Mr. Dodson. Now, if you will follow me." Thomas led David down the hallway to a large room filled with plush chairs and sofas. There was a big flat-screen TV on one wall. There was also a refreshment bar filled with all kinds of snacks and drinks. "Make yourself comfortable and help yourself to anything you want." David got himself a snack and a drink, then sat down in one of the plush recliners. He turned on the TV and surfed until he found something to watch. An hour went by, and David was starting to get a little worried. Then Thomas came into the room carrying a clipboard. "I'm sorry that took so long, Mr. Dodson, but I have some numbers for you now." Thomas took a seat in the chair beside David's. "The bags had 15 coins each. Each coin weighed around 5 ounces. So 30 coins at $6,000 apiece, that comes to $180,000. The gold bar weighed in at 10 pounds. As you know, gold is weighed in troy ounces, and there are a little over 14 troy ounces in a pound. The bar tested to be the same purity as that of the coins. In short, the bar appraised at $170,000. Add to that the coins, and we come to a grand total of $350,000. "I see," David said. "Do you have the resources to buy that much?" "Yes, we have a number of investors that we buy gold for. It will be no problem." "How much cash can you give me before you have to report it to anyone?" "We can give you up to $10,000 before we have to report it." "Okay, here's what I'd like. Give me $9,500 in cash and wire the rest of it to this account." David handed Thomas the Cayman Island account number. "I will need to get some information from you, Mr. Dodson." "I thought you didn't report any of this," David said, clearly alarmed. Sensing David's unease, Thomas said, "We don't report it. We need the information strictly for our private files. I assure you nothing leaves this building." Although David acted upset, he was doing just that, acting, for due to his growing paranoia, he was prepared for just this situation. Still acting, David reluctantly reached into his wallet and retrieved Randy Dodson's driver's license. The very license David had spent hours tolling over at his kitchen table. Carefully slitting the laminate and scraping off Randy's picture and replacing it with one of him. He then repaired the laminate. David then put the license on the floor and scraped his shoe across it a few times to give it a worn look. Thomas took the license, copied the information to his clipboard, and handed the license back to David. "How long will this take?" David asked. "The money transfer will take about 30 minutes to show up in your account." "You don't mind if I stay here until that's completed, do you?" "Of course not. Make yourself at home. I will be back with your cash in a few minutes." 20 minutes later, Thomas came back and counted David out 95 $100 bills. He then asked David to sign a receipt. "Easy there, Chief. I'm not going to sign anything until this whole transaction is finished." David got out his cell phone and opened the app he had downloaded that allowed him to check his offshore account. It took a few seconds to make the connection. Then the display showed that David's account now held $340,500. David signed Thomas's receipt, whereupon Thomas thanked him graciously for his business and welcomed him to come back any time. As David was driving home, his cell phone rang. There was no caller ID, and David did not recognize the number. David cautiously answered the phone. It was Jacob Devon, one of the vice presidents of the Cayman Island Bank. He was calling to thank David for his recent deposit and to inquire if there was anything he could do for him. "Does your bank buy and sell gold?" David asked. "Of course we do, and we charge less commission than most gold brokers," the VP informed David. "One other thing," David continued. "Do you let people store valuables in your vault that are too big to fit into a safe deposit box?" This caught Jacob off guard, and he hesitated a moment. "We would have to inspect the items to make sure they pose no threat or danger." "That sounds reasonable." "Oh, does your bank have an armored truck?" "No, we use a local security company for transport." "Okay, listen, I'll be down your way in a few weeks or so. I look forward to meeting you in person." "I look forward to meeting you also, Mr. Dodson." The next day, David went down and applied for a passport using his real driver's license. Chapter 16. The next week, David had a week-long garage sale. He tried to sell everything except his bed. He could just eat takeout for the remainder of his stay. While he was having his garage sale, Earl, his landlord, stopped by with a worried look on his face. "Are you leaving me, David?" "Yes, sir. I just can't take the wage garnishment any longer." "But you're paid up for the next 2 months. Let me give you some of that money back." "That's all right. You keep it. Call it a cleaning deposit." The next week, David's passport arrived, and he was just about set, but he needed to make one more run to the gold trading people. This time, David rented a pickup using Randy Dodson's driver's license. He took 2 sacks of coins and 2 gold bars. That was all his briefcase could hold. Before he left, David made sure to put his pistol in the center console of the truck. The ride over was uneventful, and the transaction went as smooth as before. David started to think he was being too paranoid about all of this, and maybe he should start to relax a bit. As he drove home along the interstate, he noticed a car behind him. The car seemed to be keeping the same distance between them. "There you go being paranoid," David thought to himself as he let up on the gas a little. The car also slowed. David went a little faster. The car kept pace. David did this a few times until he was sure the car was indeed following him. "Well, I wonder who it is this time," David thought. As David got close to home, he took a detour and drove up to where he dug for gold. He knew these roads like the back of his hand. David turned onto a dirt road that dead-ended in a canyon. He increased his speed as much as he could and still maintained control of the pickup. This caused a large dust cloud, and the car had to slow down or risk running off the road. The road made a sharp curve as it ended. David slid his truck to a stop, retrieved his pistol from the console, stepped out, and had it leveled at the car when it came around the corner. Seeing David, the driver of the car locked his brakes, but this just started the car sliding on the loose dirt. David, having anticipated the slide, stepped to the side and had his gun trained on the driver's head when the car finally stopped. "Get your hands up," David ordered. The driver complied. "Now, who the hell are you?" David asked. "I'm Special Agent Charles Fisk of the IRS. "Are you armed?" "No." "No? What do you mean, no? Do you expect me to believe that you're stupid enough to follow someone who you suspect has a lot of gold this far into the Mojave Desert and not come armed?" "My division is not permitted to carry firearms. I was just ordered to follow you to confirm your identity." What made you follow me? Who told you about me? Charles seemed not to want to answer those questions. Without hesitation, David shot the driver's rear window. This, of course, took out the passenger's side window as well. Okay. We have a spy in the gold trader's office. They alert us to any large transactions. You're just a bunch of thieves. I should gut shoot you and leave you for the coyotes. We're not thieves. Oh, really? You take my money without my consent, and if I don't give you my money, you threaten me with jail time. But we're the government, and everyone has to pay their fair share. Don't give me any of that politically correct bullshit. You can take all that stuff and shove it up your ass. I see you need a lesson. Get out your wallet, David commanded. Charles removed his wallet from his jacket. Now give me all your money. Charles seemed to hesitate. Now see, you were too slow in handing over your money, which means you have incurred a penalty. David promptly shot the car's left front tire. Charles then threw his wallet at David. No, I just wanted your money, not your wallet. You didn't follow the instructions properly. That's another penalty. David shot the car's left rear tire. Does any of this seem familiar? If I don't pay my taxes on time, it's a penalty. If I make an honest mistake on the paperwork, that's a penalty. You need to study your history. The people did not get to vote for the income tax. It was forced upon us. I hope that you will do some serious soul searching, quit drinking the Kool-Aid, and find yourself another profession. Now, give me your cell phone. Charles quickly handed David his phone. David smashed the phone against a rock. David then got back into the rental truck and drove away. David knew the jig was up, but he still had a little time. They still didn't know his real name and address. David drove to the crime-ridden part of town and called a taxi. When the taxi arrived, David stepped out of the truck, leaving it running, and got into the taxi. The truck would be gone within 5 minutes. The taxi driver gave David a questioning look, but when David handed him a $100 bill, all he could say was, "Where to, sir?"